Hey, welcome everyone to the Automates Who Innovate series. I'm M. Daigle, founder of Automates, and I'm thrilled to be hosting this conversation today. For those who don't know me, I've spent my career at the intersection of accounting, finance, and technology, helping teams to modernize their operations, embrace automation, and really just become business partners in their organizations. That's why I founded Automates. I don't really believe that there's a perfect tech stack out there. I think there's the right solution for the right problem at the right place and at the right time. So Automates is a growing community of accountants, finance professionals who are passionate about automation and innovation. So whether you're just getting started with process improvements or you're deep into transforming some sort of workflow with cutting edge technology, this is the space where we can learn from one another, share insights, and help to push our industry forward. So Automates Who Innovate is our series that highlights game changers in our field, accountants who have transitioned into maybe tech, built some automation first teams, or really pioneered new ways of how we work every day. So today's guest is actually a perfect example of that. And I can't wait for you all to hear her story. So let's get started. Welcome, Daniela.
Hi, no, thank you. It is great to be here. It's on my
Awesome. So excited to have you on. And we'll work through all the details about how you came into the role you're in now, but would love if you could first just introduce yourself and describe your current role at Everest.
so my name is Daniela Bischoff. I usually go by Danny. I started at Everest Systems a little over 3 years ago. Before that, I was an accounting person going from various roles. My career started back in Venezuela. I had studied accounting for a 5-year program there. And then I moved to the US. But before that, I was in various roles like outsource accounting, I was in finance, I was in audit. And then when I moved to the US, I was able to be in-house accounting, going from basically intern all the way to senior accounting manager. My last role was in a company called Agiloft. I was there a controller. And after being there for almost a year, the opportunity came of me being a product manager. Never thought that that could be possible. And so here I am, 3.5 years after. I don't regret it.
I love that. And, I think you and I have spoken, and I can't wait for everybody else to hear sort of like how it came to be because it's a really interesting story that, like you said, you never really would have imagined yourself there, but you sort of got there by way of some, I'll say extenuating circumstances, but some pretty neat ones where an opportunity came your way. But before we get into that, would love to ask you, like, how has the foundation of accounting helped you transition into this role? And maybe like which accounting skills have you found to be the most valuable outside of the like a more traditional accounting role?
Yeah, that is a great question that I every day think about because sometimes I'm even surprised myself, like, oh, how was I able to do this? And so, I think, I can speak from like the various roles that I have, like I mentioned, like outsource accounting, in-house, auditing, finance. I think there's not like a true thing that just gave me that opportunity to just be here. I think it was just a mix of things.
Mhm.
And so with that whole perspective of being able to, you know, seeing things on the eyes of the others, when I was in auditing, I always thought, oh, like what would it be to be in-house? Or when I was in-house, oh, like that auditor was so nice and, kind of playing out of, sometimes you hear like auditors sometimes are not the best, of communicating or trying to like be, oh, this is wrong or something. So I had a really good relationship with the auditors that I had because I knew that I was one once and I knew sort of how to treat that. Uh,
Yeah.
and so that gave me the perspective. And I always, from everything in my career and personal life, like trying to put in myself in the other people's shoes so that
Mhm.
you can understand, their point of view. But I think with that, maybe of how my personal career went or just that, it also gave me the perspective of, you know, accounting, yes, it's very like domain heavy. It's like a lot of rules, a lot of guidances, like more structure. But when you think about product management, it's you may think like, oh, it's more free form, like, oh, it's like very fluffy, job. But in reality, yes, it's more dynamic, but you still need to have kind of structure and like you have a process. And so, think about, I don't know, like the monthly close process equals a release. And so, yes, you have like cycles, but then within a release, you might be like, oh, every month or every couple months or whatever, you may be doing the same thing, but not every day is the same. In accounting is a little different because technically every close is a little bit more closer to each other and like similar tasks. But when you think about like the things that are in accounting that may be closer to product management in terms of processes,
Mhm.
I think from me, the product management is I guess when you think about the pain points that I experienced in the past of using systems, things didn't work, lack of automation, like all that, like just considering the things that I knew that could be better into something that I can put into my job and say like, what was my pain point in the past? And then with that, I can be like, oh, this didn't work for me before. Let me make it better. And so, when I got the opportunity, it was like, oh, like I could be building a system for myself, in a future self if I were to go back in accounting. And so that's how I found always like very interesting in that regard.
Yeah. I mean, who better to create and work on products than somebody who's been there, lived it,
Yeah.
and know firsthand what could make it better? That's why I love when there are solutions like Everest that are built for accountants, but also built by accountants, which I think is a really important thing as well, just because then you so intimately know what the end result should be and what would make it the easiest sort of way to get there for the people using it.
Yeah, totally. And a few other things in terms of um when you think about, other things in accounting that you may think they're not related at all like to product management, but things like working in teams, like you have
Yeah.
to work in teams in basically every role, but in product management, like you really have to. Like product management, it's nothing if you don't collaborate with others, if you don't deal with development and design. And so, that was something to me that also resonated. Like you even from an example of, I don't know, working in capitalized software, being the person working and talking, doing an interview with development, you know, that also kind of translated into me like, oh, like now I'm closer to the development. I can understand more how those things are. Even though that I'm not doing the capitalized software, but if I were to do a feature around that, or if I need to work on company or like development discussions, I know how to talk to them in a little bit better way than if I didn't have that opportunity in the past.
Absolutely. I think that's super insightful. So now I'm curious, so obviously some unexpected doors have opened, and I think probably around that, it probably would be worth mentioning how you actually even made that transition. Like, what was that opportunity? Because I think it's really interesting how you got to know the folks at Everest and made the leap from accounting to product management. But can you share with everybody like how that all came about and why maybe taking on some opportunities that maybe don't seem like a job opportunity per se could turn into something where it could take your career in a different path?
Yeah, totally. I every time I even mention it to people, it's like, yeah, like you're saying, like it is kind of a funny story. And and there are several folks in my company that actually got to Everest the same way. So 3.5 years ago, or maybe like 4 years ago, the company has been around for almost 5 years. And 5 years, 4 years ago, a lot of the conversations that were happening with customers, they were more like people like me that they
Mhm.
were reaching out to get early feedback. And when I say early feedback, it was like not much product, but it was more like, tell me about your pain point. So I understanding kind of like what is wrong with the market, understanding the market, what's not working with the current systems. And so with that, they reached out to me in I think it was like March or April 2021, and I was at the current role of a controller for a few months.
Mhm.
They reached out. There's like, hey, we're building this new ERP focused on SaaS. Like, we want your feedback. Back in the day, the only things that they had was pretty much a sales order. Like, hey, can you give us feedback here? And so, I must have give them good feedback as I was talking with them because um I think it was Sandeep and Jackson, two of the folks that have been at the company, and Sandeep being the co-founder. He's like, have you thought of being in product? And I'm like, no, not at all. Like, I've never thought it could be possible. And fast forward several months after that, we continued some of the conversations. And then, in November 21, I joined as one of the first PMs in Knowledge One accounting from the domain.
That's such an interesting story. When you told me that, not that I didn't believe you, but I was like, my gosh, you went in thinking you were just giving feedback, and now you've had a complete career transition into a different role. How have you seen maybe some accounting professionals also successfully pivot into roles, maybe not product management, but maybe like RevOps or FP&A or even some sort of technology leadership within your purview?
Yeah, no, I've seen a lot of it changing. Maybe not recently, but over the last 5 years, I've seen quite a few. I've seen people going from accounting to FP&A that, probably they're kind of stuck in their careers. They just want to do something different. They try the FP&A and then they continue there and then they become, the next CFOs. A few of the people in my company, five people report to me within the company, and five of them made the change from something else to product, three of them from accounting and two of them from FP&A. And so it gives you kind of the mindset that it is possible. And I would say, the one thing I didn't mention before is when you get one LinkedIn message, sometimes you think, oh, here's another sales call, or here's another message that, they're gonna keep bothering me about. But, at the beginning, that's what I thought it was, like another of those sales, opportunities that I was not interested in. The person that reached out to me made it was like, this is not a sales call. We just want your feedback. And so with that, it's like being open to hear or like provide feedback that you can be part of something that, it could make your life better in the future.
Yeah. It's interesting because I had something somewhat similar when I made my career pivot. So I did something very similar for those who don't know, started in auditing. So left public accounting after I figured out that wasn't for me, did some in-house just industry type of work, and then got into the automation space, but as a customer. So I was implementing automation solutions, and by way of that, ended up going and actually working for one of those vendors, which was Zora, to be able to help like on the go-to-market side. So figuring out how we can help get the tool in the hands of accountants. So I'm curious from your perspective, how can accountants leverage maybe some automation expertise to help break into some different types of roles? Or, maybe if there's something that automation can help them in shaping a different type of career for themselves than the standard typical either public or industry accounting day-to-day career that they might be in now.
Yeah, so I have kind of two answers for that. I think it depends on the how much automation have you been exposed with, or the lack of automation that you have been exposed to. In the cases of in my earlier days in my career, we were implementing NetSuite, we were like doing a lot of things around that, but then we saw like, there's a big gap on what we need. And so we try to implement other tools to connect to NetSuite and being able to do a bunch of things. And so, when you're in the back office of finance and accounting, usually you're just an extra expense, and so people don't want to put that extra effort into spending the money to make automation better. And so in that case, that's one of the things that it made me think of what were the things that I lack of from an automation perspective that I would like other systems to have. And so that's why I kind of thought like, well, if I want something better, I better be part of it. And so that's why I'm basically made it here. But I guess the other side of the story of like the other answer that I think I have here is, nowadays, probably maybe not, maybe 2 years ago would have been a little different because of the era of AI. But nowadays I think you're kind of in the trend. Like if you want to experiment with ChatGPT or experiment with the different AI tools, like
Mhm.
you have the power to do that. Being able to maybe not necessarily embed in your own platform, bless you, but then being
Sorry,
able,
thank you. I keep sneezing.
okay, but then being able to say, hey, I have this need, I have this tool that can help me. Now, that's a part I've struggled a little bit into. I think communities like Automates can help get those ideas and get the things connected. Because sometimes, like, I have this problem, I have this tool, I don't know how to make the two things together. But I think hearing from people and hearing the ideas, I think it's what make probably the next step of like collaborating with others and then helping to, you know, step up in these roles that probably, you might get, I don't know, your tasks that were pretty painful to do, you get automation. Well, now you have more time to focus on more strategic areas or more things that can step up your role and focus on like, okay, now I have more time that I can do for focus on, maybe more my career instead of spending hours doing a bank reconciliation. And so from that, you can actually pivot and then maybe, who knows, that can give you opportunities of things that while working with others or doing, collaborating with other people in communities, you can actually network, connect with people, and that can give you other opportunities.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's so much around. Oh, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze again. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. Something is tickling my nose. This is not the time to be sneezing. There's something about being curious right now, especially around automation and AI and everything that you can leverage. I think now more than ever, there's like this room to be a little creative outside of maybe the typical debits and credits that people are used to or a strict process. And so now being able to like go out, see what's there, evaluate, explore, that sort of thing. I've seen some great uh, discussions going on in the Automate Slack channel around just that. And so, I've gotten some notes on the side, which is great too, because people are finding ways that they didn't even know existed to be able to figure out how they can make a process better that before it was just sort of um, going through the motions because that's what was there when they started, but now kind of questioning and challenging a little bit more to figure out there's got to be a better way to do this. What are some of those different solutions, whether it's um, purchasing an automation solution meant for that is purpose built for something or leveraging AI. It could even be some sort of chat GPT, workaround, I'll call it, to figure out a better way to do something. But I think there's a level of curiosity now that everybody's working together to figure that out. Probably goes along the same lines of what you're mentioning, but is there any advice that you would give to accountants who are thinking about transitioning into more of a tech focused role, maybe thinking about yourself and or those 5 people on your team that came from accounting and finance and maybe thinking about their journeys too, but any advice you would give to folks to kind of trying to think about what they should either be doing now or how they can look for roles like yours or similar to those on your team.
Yeah, I would say, first, I think being open that opportunities exist and that you could probably take it. One kind of anecdote also related to the MBA program that I did was, that some people wanted to start a product club, and I was like, and they wanted me to join. I'm like, why would I join? I mean, it sounds interesting, but why would I? Kind of similar to what like have you thought of being in product? And so with that, it's like always being open. Like you never know what's gonna come your way. But with that, I would say, um, also if you're interested in an area and you don't know how to make the change, let's say in product management, like read about the people, like follow the people from, I don't know, like product leaders in on LinkedIn, and like read their blogs, like follow them, read their, I don't know, watch their videos. I think that's something that it's kind of free advice or like free resources that you have. I mean, there's a lot of out there, so I would say don't follow every single one of them because your LinkedIn is going to be super overwhelmed. But I think it's like take what it's interesting and doesn't in like disregard what it doesn't that you don't care. Another big thing is, listen to podcasts that may be interested in regarding a specific area. Also, I do think that at least in product management, you have to be kind of like a self-starter. So like if you're entrepreneurial and a self-starter, consider that being part of like a kind of like a check done that you need for your product management. And so read books. That's something that I've been doing, in this journey, like read product management books, design books, even like data model books. Like when I started here, I didn't know anything about data modeling or anything like that. Not that I'm an expert, I understand it now. And so like, but that's kind of things that you need from like the day to day. And so like you get more familiar with that. And I think one big thing that I think it's important from a product management, I think, but any type of career or strategic role is like improve your communication skills, participate in, I don't know, like how to give speeches, or even negotiation courses like product management. Like sometimes you have to negotiate and push for something that you care about but that the other people don't think that that's important, or being able to influence others without having them to report to you in a way. And so that's kind of a good skill that it's good to have, but it's not as easy to learn.
Absolutely. I think there's something to be said for probably the folks that would be most interesting in looking for these roles are probably, I used the word before, but I'll use it again, more naturally curious and just sort of, and you said self-starter. But I think for anybody listening, for those who are kind of drawn to that continuous learning and exploring new things and being open to areas outside of maybe your traditional responsibilities as an accountant. I know that's how I sort of started to get interested in some other areas because, I knew there had to be a better way than what we were doing in our traditional process that I kind of took on by way of, coming into a company and having a traditional role. But also, I was just naturally curious about the areas we could improve, how we could improve it. And then as I went through an evaluation process, the implementation, then learning to use the tool and testing the tool, I realized there was like this whole world outside of what my purview was at the time that really interested me and challenged me. So to your point, you don't need to be an expert at all things just to go and start to explore an area or get involved. Maybe you're not an expert in, like you said, data modeling or product or whatever it might be. But if you've got the basis of understanding and that subject matter expertise that accountants need, that can help bridge to whatever it is that you want to get into in a really seamless way. I've worked with a number of folks, had the pleasure to that came from an accounting background, but then moved into different roles like yourself. And I almost felt like I saw those people kind of come alive, where I knew them as accountants and they were wonderful people then, but really saw them come into their own and be able to develop into what I saw as somebody who seemed much more motivated in a different capacity. Not sure if you've seen that on your team at all.
Yeah, no, I have this definitely seen. I think if I were to look at the people that I work with in a accounting capacity, it would be very different in terms of like dynamic. You know,
Yeah.
management very dynamic. Like it's always kind of creative. Like, but here you're kind of seeing the best of both worlds. Like you're seeing like the creative world meet the accounting brain, call it, or like the more analytical brain. But one thing that I would say, I think what I was mentioning earlier, like I think to me, one of the things that I have found, and maybe it's a personal skill, not a product management skill that I have developed, but it's like having the empathy of what others, kind of like putting yourself in the other people's shoes, like, put yourself in the customer's shoe. Like you, in this case, I was a customer at some point. And so me thinking of how would I be treated, how should I be treated, from like being on a sales call all the way to how I want to be treated from the product management side, or being part of the implementation of how I would like to be treated. I think those are one of the core things that I have seen, that it's not only something that I have seen in product management in my company, but it's kind of one of the core things at the company. It's like we really care about the customer, and we really care making it successful, and it's not just another number. And so just want to kind of make the point there too, because sometimes you may lose kind of track of, okay, you kind of execute, but that you may forgot about the end goal, which is like making the customer ultimately successful.
I love that. And you said something that I think is a great takeaway around using creativity, but with an accounting mind. I feel like that could create a bunch of little superheroes running around because I think those things together could be unmatched for sure. So I think that's wonderful. So Daniela, thank you so much.
Thank you
Really
for having me.
appreciate you joining me today. And thank you to anybody watching the session. Um, like I said, I think if there's any takeaways, it's that, the accounting background is more of a launch pad, not a limitation. So I think the skills learned and tested around problem solving and thinking about those outcomes and how we can really make the whole space a better place can really open doors to unexpected and really exciting career opportunities, especially in automation and technology and some of these more strategic business roles. So, as we've heard from Daniela, embracing automation and new technologies isn't necessarily about like efficiency, but maybe positioning yourself in the best way and what interests you the most. So, um, I would say if you're ready to take the next step, I would invite you to explore some ways with Automates with the resources we have, maybe some of the community connections you can make, like Daniela and myself. And then would also encourage everybody to share their own insights too on shaping their own careers. So again, Daniela, thank you so much. Really appreciate you sharing your story and being part of the conversation. And we'll see everyone on the next session. Thanks so much.
Thank you.